Hi, I'm Chef Ray. Welcome to my kitchen, Treasures of Food. I got content coming out the wazoo, basically. We're creaming our butter and shortening together. Sugar, that's one. Most chefs, either we're chefs or we're pastry chefs. There's few chefs that actually can do both. Thank God that he's gifted me to be able to also cook and also bake at the same time. Oh boy, that make you call on Jesus. That's so good. Good afternoon and welcome to Chef Ray's Treasure of Food. Today we're going to spend some time, as I stated earlier in my intro video, we're going to start in the beginning. So I wanted to pay homage to my great grandmother, Grandma Henry as we called her. She actually used to bake a traditional pound cake on a wood burning stove. Now, I'm probably dating my age, which I am 55, but nonetheless, her stovetop served as two different principles within her home. One, it was to cook on, and then also in the winter months, it was to heat her home, and it sat smack dead in the middle of her home. The crazy part of it is I used to ask her, Granny, how in the world do you know what the temperature is? She said she knew what the color of the fire was and how many logs she had in there that controlled the temperature of the oven. And I tell you, every Sunday when we would go down there with my cousins, we would get a slice of pound cake. She said it was apple juice, but after talking to a couple of my aunts, we confirmed Christmas Day that it was probably homemade wine that she used to make. So after we'd eat this great pound cake, we would take a shot of apple juice supposedly, but I think it was wine. But nonetheless, when I decided to go to culinary school back in 2002, and I'm telling my dad that I'm getting ready to leave corporate America after 16 years, and I wanted to become a chef because my pastime was always cooking. I grew up around food, around great women and men that all cooked very well. When I told my dad that, my dad says, "Oh, you're not gonna be a damn chef." He says, "Your grandmother and your mom, those are the actual true chefs because they churn their own butter, they beat their own cakes." So in saying that, I wanted to share my treasure of the pound cake. I couldn't tell you how many pound cakes I've made over the years, but the good thing is I told my brothers and sisters and relatives, I've mastered Grandma Henry's pound cake, but the most important thing is I realized I was a good chef once I was able to take her traditional pound cake and turn it into, probably I got like 6 different variations. Everything from the strawberry to the lemon to the chocolate, and I actually did a German chocolate pound cake as well last week. So today, I'm gonna take you through my treasures with my grandmother on how she told me the correct way to make a traditional pound cake. So to tell you how serious I am about my pound cakes, as you can see, I have a variety of different molds. Everything from the individual pound cake to the traditional smaller mold pound cake to the larger mold to designs, you name it. So let's get started. Now, of course, as I always said, I'm going to give you some of my treasures that I've found over the years. Now, everybody always talks about butter, right? Butter, butter, butter. And then a lot of people believe that you have to use the high-end butters to make a great cake, particularly a pound cake. Now, some 12 years ago when I became a chef, I befriended one of the managers in Kroger's, and his name was Mr. Childs here on Sweetwater in Sugarland. And I went in for one of these high-end brands of butters, which was Lands of Lakes, right? And they didn't have any. So he said, "Chef," he says, "give Kroger's butter a try." And he says, "We actually manufacture our own butter." He says, "It's not inferior to any other brand." So from that moment, when I tried the Kroger's butter, that's all I bake with is the Kroger's butter. This is a treasure, trust me. Every cake, if you've bought a pound cake from me, if you bought a cheesecake from me, if whatever you've bought from me, there is some Kroger's butter. You're gonna start with 1 cup, basically 2 sticks, a half a cup of shortening, 3 cups of sugar, 6 eggs, 1 cup of Kroger sour cream, 1/4 cup of milk, whole milk, teaspoon of whatever extract that you want the cake to take on. If it's plain, vanilla, rum, lemon, strawberry, whatever it is, 1 teaspoon, a half a teaspoon of baking powder, and 3 cups of my favorite, Swan's Down cake flour. So I want to spend a quick moment talking about cake flour versus all-purpose flour. There's really no rhyme and reason to if you use AP or cake flour, but there is a difference. Cake flour is much lighter, it's bleached, it has less gluten, and it actually makes your cake much lighter. So for most people that love my pound cake and tell me that it stays moist for a week, 10 to 12 days, and I also tell people, if you can't eat all of the pound cake, slice it, put it in Ziploc bags, freeze it, pull it out, room temperature, nuke it for 5 seconds, and it's just like it came out the oven. So I am an advocate of cake flour. Swan's is the best on the market. Pound cake 101. We're gonna start with our butter. Now, the secret to baking any baked good, my pastry chef at the Art Institute, he and I would butt heads because when I knew we were gonna be using butter the next day, because we'd have class the first day and then lab on day 2 and 3, I would purposely leave my butter, or basically my dairy products, out in my locker. Because my grandmother, again, Grandma Henry, says all your dairy products should be at room temperature. And the reason why is that when you go to mix the butter, the shortening, your eggs, it mixes much better, it creams better. So you'll see that here in a second. So we're gonna first mix the shortening and butter together and cream it together. Now, as I said, I've got this big commercial mixer. Grandma didn't have that. So I just sit here and let it blend the butter and shortening together for about 3 to 4 minutes. I know most recipes call for you to cream your butter or butter and shortening together with your sugar all at once. But I always believe that it's best to cream the shortening and butter together by itself. And once that's creamed together, because that way, sometimes with shortening, it has like the pellets in it. So you want the smooth consistency in the butter and the shortening together before you add the sugar. And that way the cake actually molds together, creams together much better. So now we're gonna add our 3 cups of sugar. That's 1. That's 2. There's our 3 cups of sugar. Alrighty, so right now we're gonna go back and we're gonna cream our shortening and butter to our sugar until we get a translucent, really pretty white color. And I'll show you here shortly. And it'll take about 2 to 3 minutes to get it all creamed. I'll probably have to scrape the sides once. That way you wanna make sure, if you are using a mixer, make it a habit to scrape the sides, because that way you know that everything's getting creamed and mixed together the correct way. Alrighty, so I've pulled the bowl down off the mixer for everyone to see. We've creamed our butter and our shortening and sugar. And that nice white pale color that I was speaking of, we've got it. And we're gonna add our eggs. But also, I wanna take you back a quick moment. As I said, it's all about treasures in the kitchen. So, now, I know most people, which I still use my handheld mixer, because I've made a lot of damn pound cakes with a handheld mixer, and I've burnt out a lot of mixers. So you can achieve the same as this commercial kitchen mixer with this handheld. So don't get defeated, alrighty? Just keep mixing, hit that power button, and let it do its thing. Next, we're gonna add our eggs, alrighty? So I always, out of rule, I always crack my eggs in a separate bowl, because as you can see, even though I've been doing this for 16 years, every so often you get an egg that just wants to let you know that you're human and a shell may just pop into there, which it just did, but I pulled it out. To where if I would have just cracked them into the bowl themselves, I would have never been able to see that little shell that had went into the bowl. And even though I've got an extra set of eyes on me, I still don't trust them when it comes to seeing small fragments. Alrighty, so we've got our eggs. We're gonna blend our eggs until they're completely blend. Now, another treasure that my grandmother taught me is when adding the eggs, you want to make sure that you beat them in there good enough, meaning that you add volume and air back into the cake, and that's what makes your cake lighter, particularly a pound cake. Alrighty, so I start off on number 2 on my mixer here, and then we're going to take it up to 3 to incorporate some air back into the cake. Alrighty, so we've got our eggs added, and as you can see, as I spoke of, my grandmother taught me when you get this nice, smooth, creamy canary yellow within your batter, you're ready to move on to the next step. Now, one thing about baking that I tell people, as a chef, most chefs, either we're chefs or we're pastry chefs. There's few chefs that actually can do both. Thank God that he's gifted me to be able to also cook and also bake at the same time. And that's actually been one of the plus advantages that I've had over the years. It got me the job with Tracy McGrady for 5 years, is where I cooked all of this food, but something told me, make sure you include some desserts. The first thing that Tracy ate that day was my peach cobbler and banana pudding, and he offered me the job before he even had the sea bass. So in saying that, baking is a science. If you don't have time, don't even go in the kitchen, right? So you have to follow a standardized recipe. Once you become good at it, then you can play around with it, tweak it. You may lose a cake here and there, which I have in variation of making different pound cakes. But the German chocolate pound cake that you'll see in the video is my next famous pound cake that's going to come out, and I've mastered it. And then we're going to add our extract at 1 teaspoon. And I know for some recipes and pound cakes, a lot of times they call for 2, but because the Watkins extract is so strong and concentrated, I've always only added 1. Alrighty, so now we're gonna blend in our sour cream, milk, and extract. Alrighty, so we've added our sour cream, our milk, and our extract. We've blended it into the batter. We have this smooth, velvety, just like jazz batter working here for the pound cake. The last treasure I'm gonna show you. Alrighty, so it calls for a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Most people, the recipe just says blend in the baking powder with the flour. I put it directly into my batter. But the last process, which is one of my secrets to making the cake even lighter, is I sift. It takes a little extra time, but I take the cake flour, which is already light and fine. I take it and I put it through my sifter one more time. And voila, family and friends, that's why you love my pound cake. That's why it's so light and it melts in your mouth when you go to eat it. Because I sift the cake flour one more time. And if you're using all-purpose flour, I guarantee you, if you just sift that flour, it also will make your cake lighter and it'll give it a whole different composition. So now we're gonna blend in this flour, cake flour, and baking powder. 98% of the recipes when it comes to baking cakes, it says bake at 350. Well, all of my cakes, pound cakes, layer cakes, I bake everything at 325. Now, for those that are not sure that if their thermometer or their temperature on their oven says 325 and internally, if it doesn't match, meaning every once in a while you need to put your oven thermometer or leave it in there and make sure that your oven's calibrated and is actually cooking at 325 and not cooking at 350 or cooking at 310. And that's probably more important than as well as mixing the cake. So there's the treasures of the pound cake. We're gonna let it bake and then we're gonna have a full-fledged tasting. Alrighty, so last thing we're gonna do before we get ready to bake it, we're gonna spray our mold, our pound cake mold with Baker's. I usually use Baker's Joy. You can use any spray you like, mixed together. It's just the easy way. I know some people do the old-fashioned way where they grease their pans and put flour in it, but call me lazy if you want, but it makes a perfect pound cake when I use the Baker's Joy. As you can see, we've got a pan sprayed very well. And now we're gonna add our batter into the mold. As you can see, we have our batter, cake batter in the mold. And now what I do is I take it and I kind of shake it to balance the batter within the mold. That way it bakes evenly. So now we're gonna place it in the oven on 325. And it's always the lower rack. In the center, close the oven. I'm gonna set my timer. Always use my iPhone. I used to, when I was much younger, I could look at the clock and remember, but now that I'm older, I don't trust it. Alrighty, so let's let that bake for about 70 minutes, hour, 10 minutes. We're gonna check it at an hour. Okay, so we're just about ready to pull this out the oven. I think I'm about 5 seconds. There we go. Time for it to come out. So, pulling it out. And here's the treasure of pound cakes 101. We're gonna let it cool for about 30 minutes and then we will put it on a cake pad and ice it with some cream cheese icing. It's been about 30 minutes. So now we're going to unmold the pound cakes on the cake pad. Perfect. Couldn't ask for a better pound cake. I literally believe I can bake these with my eyes closed. Traditional cream cheese icing, which I said basically told you it's cream cheese, butter, and powdered sugar, a little bit of milk, and I add a little bit of vanilla extract to it. So we're gonna glaze this beautiful cake. And I just come along with the spoon, just kind of drop it on there and let it do, it'll do its own design as far as where it wants to drop to the bottom. Man. Alrighty, so we're gonna, let's see what it looks like. Oh my, that's perfect. You see the consistency of that? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And it's still warm. All I need now is some ice cream. Pound cake, which is the foundation. It's just a traditional pound cake. So the next one, after I mastered the pound cake, I thought, well, let's go to the lemon. So here's the lemon. And as you can see, the consistency is the same, right? I had a client that loves my chocolate ganache cake. And if anybody knows about a chocolate ganache, which down the road, we are going to do my famous chocolate ganache. The thing is, for most bakers and chefs know, doing a ganache is not an overnight process. It takes time. So I told him, I said, you know what? Let me see if I can take my grandmother's traditional pound cake and turn it into a nice chocolate pound cake. And I'm gonna give you the treasures that I found in turning the traditional pound cake into my famous chocolate pound cake. Now again, let's go back over here. Same consistency, perfect. When I make my chocolate cake, I use the special dark chocolate because it's 100% cocoa, all right? Most recipes, chocolate cake just calls for cocoa, which is just the basic Hershey cocoa. But I'm gonna give you the treasure I found and experimenting, doing my research and development, because it took me about 2 months to get the chocolate pound cake perfect. My treasure that I found is don't use the traditional Hershey cocoa. Get the special dark. And if you do, you can see how beautiful it makes not just your pound cake, but your traditional chocolate cake. So I decided I was gonna do a strawberry pound cake. So in saying that, again, just like the chocolate pound cake, I had to do some research and development just to get it right. Now, all of these pound cakes, the traditional, as well as the lemon, sour cream. The chocolate has 1 extra cup of milk, no sour cream, right? But the strawberry, right? No sour cream, but I had to play around with buttermilk. So it has 1 cup of buttermilk. And as you could see, the consistency is pretty much is the same. That's fresh strawberries within the pound cake. And man, let me tell you, I'm gonna do a taste on each one. And let's just see what the palate tells me. So. Oh boy, that make you call on Jesus. That's so good. It's perfect. So let's try the strawberry. The strawberry is actually one of my favorite because I love just fresh strawberries. Oh man. I wish y'all were here to taste this. I hate to eat in front of you. I always was told it was rude to eat in front of people while I'm on camera. Who doesn't love chocolate? With Valentine's right around the corner, it may be time to perfect your chocolate cake for your loved one or whoever your special person is and use Chef Ray's pound cake for Valentine's dinner. Amazing. Man, it's been fun today, family and friends. Let me tell you, you have the fundamentals 101 in pound cake baking today, and it all came from my grandmother, great-grandmother, Grandma Henry. So when you go to bake that pound cake, I guarantee you, if you follow the directions that she gave me, it's just gonna be like you've baked your own pound cake on that wood burning stove that's set in the center of her home. Thank you. Look forward to the next episode. God bless.